And we're ready to go. Good afternoon. I'm Trudy Murata, a volunteer community ambassador with AARP Virginia, and I want to welcome you to our HomeFit Modifying Your Home for Safety and Comfort webinar this afternoon. And thank you so much for joining us from all over the country. Today's program is scheduled to go for about 75 minutes, although we may finish a bit early depending on Q&As. And if you find you have a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box and we'll address as many questions as we can at the end of the program. In the reminder email for today's session, we included a link to download the slide presentation if you wish to follow along. Additionally, if you provided us with your mailing address, we'll be mailing a hard copy of the Home Fit Guide later to you this week. AARP surveys shows that nearly 90% of the 50+ population want to stay in their homes and communities as they age, where they have strong social networks and a sense of familiarity. Who doesn't? Most people say they want to stay in their homes and remain involved in their communities as they grow older. But will their communities and their homes be livable for them? This is a question that AARP has been asking since its founding in 1958, and the association remains a leader in promoting housing options to this day. That's why webinars like today are so important. So now, on to the program. I am thrilled to be joined this afternoon by Bob Eiffert and Jane King. Together, they will be presenting this program, so let me tell you a little bit about each of them. Bob has been active in the Aging Network for 30 years. He was the director of Alexandria's Agency on Aging, the deputy director of the city's Office of Housing, the director of Senior and Specialized Housing for Fairfax County, and the long-term care program manager for Fairfax County. He retired in 2016 when he began volunteering for AARP and our HomeFit program. He has served on the Alexandria Commission on Aging for 12 years and was chair twice. He has been an Alexandria resident for nearly 40 years, and we are very fortunate to have Bob on our team. Jane King is a consultant and writer on a range of issues involving development of livable communities and that support the ability of their aging residents to age in place. She's had a long career in consumer protection in the nonprofit, government, and corporate sectors. I'm having trouble talking today. Before retiring from AARP in 2006, she was a manager of AARP programs that focused on consumer protection and housing, as she has helped to coordinate the development of AARP's strategic direction for its work in support of livable communities. So we are so fortunate that Jane continues to serve with AARP many years into her retirement from AARP. Jane, that's very impressive. In her volunteer role for AARP, she has led discussions of Medicare and healthcare reform and is currently presenting AARP's HomeFit programs. I'll be back at the end of their presentation with my colleague, Sarah Jacobs, to help with question and answers. But for now, please give a warm welcome to Bob and to Jane. I will give you the platform.
All right. I think Trudy gave a great explanation for AARP's interest in this HomeFit presentation. And that is for the very good reason that so many of us want to stay in our homes and communities. However, as we age, and I think we all understand this, there can be circumstances in which the home that we might have bought when we were younger is no longer adapting to our needs now. So this can affect everything, every part of the house. So the purpose today is to go through all the considerations involved in adapting a home for aging residents and for all residents. Actually, a lot of these adaptations are good for anybody who would be in the home. Um, and exactly what's required to accomplish this, to create a home, even from what you're living in now, making the changes that could take you through a much longer life in your home. Unfortunately, as you know, many of our homes were not designed with this in mind. So part of what we're doing today is going through the possibilities for changing homes. I think another consideration is if you know you're going to move, to take a look at what we're presenting today and the Home Fit Guide. So you look for those characteristics in a new home. The next slide, please. So what we're going to go through today as our agenda is the benefits of making your home a home fit home. How is this going to improve your life as you age? How is it going to make it possible for you to stay in your community for as long as possible? You also may be near your children where you are and so forth. So you may have many reasons where you want to stay where you are. One very important concept in designing a home or adapting a home to stay in it as you age is universal design. So we'll be discussing that. What design principles create a universally designed home? And then we will be doing a home tour, making your home fit by showing you what can be done in each of the kinds of rooms in your house, from a bathroom, kitchen, living room, dining room, bedrooms, and so forth. Next slide, please. So the workshop objectives are very clear. Those of you participating today will be able to recognize how a home can be modified to support your changing needs and lifestyle at any age. And one thing you want to be considering as we go through this is, what are your special needs? Do you have special hobbies? Do you have special furniture that needs accommodation because you want to keep it? All those considerations need to be taken into account. So what modifications are important for maintaining the lifestyle that you want? Do you want to keep doing what you've been doing in your home all along? How can you make sure that's possible as you age? And distinguish between modifications that you can do yourself and that are best left to a professional. And the Home Fit Guide is very useful with describing those differences. So this is a question for you. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word home? If you put that in the chat, that would be very helpful.
And the first thing that came up, Jane, is when they think of home, they think of family.
I think that may be true for all of us, especially if you're in the home where you raised your family. You have wonderful memories there. I think our friendships are remembered in our homes, our relationship to the community. What is the expression? Our homes are where our heart is. And especially for those of us who have been in homes for some time, that is especially true. And I see here that somebody has said we want our homes to be safe and comfortable. And that's often how we feel. Just imagine coming home from a long trip and arriving home. What do you feel? The relaxation of being back in that familiar, wonderful place.
Exactly. Some of the other comments that came in are a place where they feel comfortable, where they feel at peace, a refuge from the world where I can go and relax, something that's safe and comfortable. And it's not only family, but it's also their neighbors.
Yes, yes. There's so many possible adjectives and concepts that could be attached to our consideration of home. So very important is the cost of not staying in your home. So a private duty home health aide can cost and this may well be the low range. I checked these on a national level, so depending on where you are, there could be significant difference. But that can be about $20 an hour. You can see how expensive that can get. Adult daycare can be in the average of, I think, around $5,000 a month. But that would depend a lot on where you live, whether your city or locality helps to support that. So I would take that average very lightly. An assisted living facility, on average, can be quite expensive. I would say in the $70,000 to $80,000 category, even more in expensive areas. A nursing home semi-private room, I believe in, keep in mind, these are national averages. There can be huge variations, but when I checked this, it was about $7,000 a month, and the private room was about $9,000 a month. Again, I'll repeat that you'd have to check this very carefully in your own area. Universal design. This concept is basically that design should be safe, accessible, available to all users. I think you can see in this slide what makes that accessible. For one thing, is that for a person in the wheelchair, the climb is not so great. There's an adjustment so that the steps don't matter there for the person in the wheelchair. That's the basic concept demonstrated right there. Some universal design that we see everywhere are curb cuts. That's a concept for universal design. Automated door openings in office buildings and so forth. But the basic idea is design that accommodates all users. In a home, this could include something like a no-step entrance to be accessible to children, older adults, wheelchairs, and so forth. This is not possible in all cases, but there can be accommodations such as this ramp that would make it possible if someone needed to enter with a wheelchair. Wider hallways to accommodate a mother and child walking through a hallway. It should be around 36 inches to be fully accommodating. This is not usually the case, but that would be ideal. Many other concepts for universal design. Again, the no-step entrance, and then we'll be talking about this when we look at different rooms in this presentation.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to my home. And as you're looking at this picture, would love to have you just share in the chat, what is your initial reaction to looking at this front of a house and the steps leading up to it? What do you think of when you see this? Great wall of time.
I agree with that. That is a long climb. It's a great way to work out. Better be in good shape before you start those stairs. Will I be able to get up there? Help, I can't get inside. I'm not climbing that. It's beautiful, but is it accessible? I'm thinking if I get up there, can I get back down? Too many steps and no railing. There's a lot of folks that think they need a little help from a universal source. Oh, I agree with that last one, Bob. How would I get my groceries in the house? Let's go back to you.
Right. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Thank you all. Yes, it's a very daunting appearing entrance here. Looking up at that long flight of steps, hopefully up in that portico area, there's actually a drive-through, so you can drive up to the door. But having a place that you can visit and get into easily is so important. Next slide. So I'm beginning with the exterior of the house, obviously that big front steps, but the point here is to ensure access for all, making sure that anyone, regardless of age or ability, can easily get into and out of your home and visit. The concept of universal design also includes a concept called visitability. And visitability means just that. Someone can come into your home and be with you and feel comfortable, get to a bathroom, and be with you in the space. Next slide. So the most obvious place to begin is the front door. And a 0-step entrance is the best way to be able to assure that you can get into and out of the house. It is the standard of universal design, as Jane already said, but being able to get in easily is the goal, and making modifications to see how that can happen to make it safe and practical. Next slide. So looking at steps, this is an illustration of what they call walker steps. What it amounts to is that the steps are deep and shallow. So it's only about 4 inches high, but 2 feet deep for each step. So the person with a walker would have an easier time of getting up into that front porch area. And you can see that they have handrails on both sides, but the idea of the walker would be able to traverse the steps that are large enough and long enough to make that possible. But going to the next slide, probably the more common way of getting into and out of a house is a ramp. And ramps come in all different shapes and sizes. There's a standard of how many, the slope of a ramp. The Americans with Disabilities Act define that as a foot of ramp for every inch of incline. So a 12-inch incline would require a 12-foot long ramp, and so on. And as you can see here, there's different types of ramps. There's a permanent ramp that goes up to the house and is designed to stay there. A temporary ramp that could be removed and replaced with steps if someone wanted to. And then a simple thing there, the threshold ramp. And the idea there is if your threshold is too high, you can have a short, simple ramp up to it. And those can be portable and removable, as well as something that is permanent and stays there in place. Next slide. For a steep area and something that simply doesn't have the ability to be safely sloped at that 1 to 12, 1 inch to 12 inch ratio, there's something called a vertical platform lift, and you see an illustration of it here. So you roll in at one level, close a door behind you, raise up to the upper level, the door in front swings open, and you roll out onto the porch area. Can be utilized in a garage if there's not space, you don't want to use up a lot of floor area for a ramp. You can put in something like this to make it easier to get in and out. But these are also good interior in buildings. I've seen them certainly in churches, houses of worship, that sort of thing, where they were designed long before there was a concern for having something without steps. And this is a way to get past a set of steps and into the house. And next. So the other thing as you approach a house that's critically important is being able to see. Outdoor lighting is so important to be able to see the house, see your way in. If you look at the style, there's a kind of a mission look on these 2 outdoor lanterns there, but the light is cast down. Oftentimes we see light fixtures where there's something on the bottom and the light is cast up. That's better than nothing, certainly, and cast out from that front panel, but something cast down that shows the steps makes a big difference. Numbers, making sure that the house number is easily visible from the street, large, lit. This is important for something as simple as the pizza delivery person. Getting something in your home, you want to be able to see and get in. And there can be, as you notice, the green stars. I think we mentioned this earlier, but those are simple, quick fixes on how to get in. Solar powered pathway lighting and ideas for displaying house numbers are easy and quick and something that's highly doable. Now, Jane.
The smart home. Now, this is using technology to improve lifestyle. Oh, sorry, I didn't start my video. Sorry. So the smart home, using technology to improve lifestyle. If we go to the next slide, there are some questions for you. Do you currently have any smart home features in your home? And how do you feel about adding smart home features? Do you feel any reluctance about that? Because you may find them difficult to deal with? Would you have someone to help you if that were the case? So if you would take this poll, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
And poll results are coming in. A lot of individuals do, in fact, have some of these features in their home already. Some of them do not. Some of them are unsure whether they either want to have them or they currently have them. I think I spend more time deleting pictures of myself getting my own mail on my Ring video system, but it does come in handy more than it's annoying. So that's great.
Yeah, it's impressive that so many people are already starting to use these, and there are examples like the Amazon Echo Alexa, Google Assistant, Ring Doorbell. Do any of you have Ring doorbells? I just find this so fascinating. You could be inside your house, you install this on your door, of course, or nearby. Whether you're in house or traveling, you could see who's at your door on your phone. So I can imagine, especially for someone who travels a lot, that this would be very helpful. So the virtual home assistant, and I think this is, you may be familiar with this, and from what I could see from your responses, some of you have this. So this is the kind of thing Alexa can be told to do. Turn the TV on and off. Dial into video calls and online meetings. Play music and podcasts. Control lights and appliances. Even do online research. Adjust thermostats. In other words, you could be doing so much of this while you're sitting. You don't have to move around your house to get this done. Lock and unlock doors. Make shopping lists, place telephone calls, provide reminders. And I personally do not have a virtual home assistant. I'm impressed so many of you do. And I know that for those of you who don't, your children may well have them. I certainly know my daughter does. So this is the kind of thing that is really going to change the lives of people in their homes. And some of this can be done remotely, which enhances the safety of home features because that's possible. Next slide. Now, in a smart home, there are, excuse me, some options. and these have become fairly commonplace, actually, such as light timers. And you have the star there because all of these are easy to install. Um, the light timers can be set so the lights in your home turn on at certain times and turn off at certain times. This can be very helpful if you want a light to be on when you get home. And also motion activation, so that a light, for example, a light installed for the outdoors or even inside will turn on as you come into a home or as you enter your yard. That those are all possible. And then there are new light bulb choices that make it possible to have specific light bulbs serving specific purposes. I'm sure you've seen those in the store, from those that LED, LED lighting, soft lighting, all kinds of different lighting, and also important, some kinds of lights that seem to last forever. I think I read that one can last for 20 years. It's just sounds remarkable. So these are the kinds of fairly simple decisions, as you see. Green stars can save you money, can make it much easier to live in your home comfortably, protect you through motion activation and so forth as you enter your yard and your house.
So back to the entry. We talked about the 0-step entrance and getting into the house, but doors are the very important opening that goes into your house that allows people in. And doorways are very important throughout the house, but certainly at the entry area to be able to allow folks access, hopefully without too many steps, and being able to easily get through that door. Next slide. Doorways need to be ideally 36 inches wide. That's a rather new standard, and even today, many new homes are not being built that way. 32 inches is a more standard. In older times, 30 inches, and even in my home, there are some doorways that are actually 24 inches wide, and very inaccessible. But a way to expand a door, if you have a door that's close to 32 inches, 32 inches is the magic number to allow a wheelchair to go through. But the door itself can block part of that width. The doorway might be 32 inches wide, but the door blocks part of that. So this is an example of what's called a swing clear hinge, and not a terribly complicated fix that can allow the door to literally be swung out of the way, to allow a larger capacity for getting through the doorway, whether a walker or a wheelchair or whatever it might be. Next slide. Going through the door for safety reasons, having a peephole, some way of seeing out if your door does not have windows, so you have some idea of who's there. Of course, a video camera doorbell can make a real difference, but that's there. Then lighting is very important. And someone earlier in the chat put in that they had a motion sensor light. We have found very inexpensive, rechargeable light fixtures that literally stick on like Velcro to a surface, and are light sensitive and also motion sensitive. So they don't come on at all when it's light outside, but when it's dark, they don't come on until there's movement and you can see your way in. Handles and door locks, certainly lever style doors. This is true throughout the house. Lever style door handles are so much easier to use than a doorknob in virtually any situation. And then the digital door lock. There are all kinds of door locks now that don't require a key. It might be a touchpad, or it could be something as simple as a key fob like you might have for your car, where it's just a proximity opener. You get close to the door and it automatically unlocks for you. Next slide. Entry spaces, creating something warm and safe and welcoming, so that people feel welcome in that space. Next slide. So there are some simple organizational strategies for using outside and inside the home. You saw earlier a picture of a bench outside the home. If there's space to have that, it can be very useful for setting down groceries and getting in the house. Same for inside the door. If there's space in the floor in an entry area, whether it's a part of the living room or a separate room at all, but having useful furniture that is there. So what you see is a storage place. It can be a narrow shelf where you can have keys, where you have a box for mail. This illustrates a waste can there where you could put junk mail directly in for recycling. The bench on the right is something where you could sit to put on or take off shoes, having hooks to hang things on, purses, coats, if you don't have a closet nearby. So useful ways. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead to Jane.
All right. Obviously, the center of a lot of our homes are the kitchen, but also the kitchen, especially because of all ages, from the older person who may need special accommodations, such as being able to sit while cutting food, to having grandchildren in the house who are potential danger to themselves in the kitchen. So there's so much that has to be accounted for in determining any changes you want to make, what kinds of changes those would be to accommodate your own needs, especially for considerations of mobility. What could accommodate a person who still wants to be involved in cooking, or at least preparation for cooking, and is in a wheelchair. The other problem with kitchens, of course, is the possible problem with fires, spills, slips, trips, and drops that can cause injuries and home damage. So it's, even though probably the most popular part of the house, the one that needs serious potential consideration for keeping it safe. So one of the things you may have to do, and I had mentioned the possibility of sitting at the table to prepare food. In other words, as people get older, they may find it difficult to be standing to do all the food preparation. So it can be very useful to work at a lower counter. And of course, a table could substitute for that lower counter. So there's much to consider in trying to make sure a kitchen is useful to all. And this can be important too for grandchildren, because they are so often so interested in baking and cooking, and you would want to figure out ways to be able to accommodate their interest. Next slide, please. So very important in the kitchen is lighting. So special lighting may need to be installed, especially under the higher cabinets, if there is not sufficient lighting, because it may cause the barrier to the lighting below the cabinet. And also you may need to install, if necessary, lower level cabinetry and pull out shelves. You may have seen those. There are some where you just touch touch a drawer and it will come out. And open shelving is another possibility, so that everything is visible. You don't have to worry about where did I put this, where did I put that, because it's visible to you. And drawers for maximizing space. The drawers can be chosen so that they give you more possibilities for storage within those drawers. Next slide, please. So what can be very important, especially for hands that are becoming arthritic, is that handles and faucet types are the most accessible, no matter what concern there would be for a person who may have limited use of hands. So one is the lever handle, as you see for the faucet. I think those are very common now. Many of you may already have those. And then the handle design, this D-shaped handle, which makes it easy for a person to reach in and get it. And as I said, there are some now where you just touch the drawer and it will open. So there are possibilities there for making it to enhance the ease of use. So appliances. And this is where ease of use and safety have to come into account. I think of particular note is the refrigerator, so that is accessible to any users in the kitchen, and you may want to keep in mind those who visit frequently. So you have a refrigerator with 2 drawers at the bottom, and then the which would be the freezer drawers, the cold water and ice, and then the common storage of a refrigerator that's shown on the left. I'm going to point out the importance of the safety of a microwave, sorry, of a microwave, because they're often raised in our kitchens, partly to save space, but for us as we get older, that can be very dangerous because we'd have to raise our hands up and then lift out something that's very hot. So it's much better to have it at a very accessible point. Next slide, please. Bob, you're on.
Just as Jane said about the kitchen as one of the focal points of the house, one of the most important places in addition to the kitchen is the bathroom. And it can be one of the most dangerous place in a house, easy for slips, trips, and falls. So trying to make the bathroom as accessible as possible and as safe as possible is critically important. Next slide. So there are, next slide. There, thank you. There are some low-cost measures that can make space more accessible, and some are more expensive than others. But you see the raised commode. It can be a standalone commode that could sit beside a bed so that someone could much more easily transfer from a bed or a chair directly to the commode without even having to go to the bathroom. That, of course, requires somebody to clean it, and that's an important consideration. The raised height toilet, making sure that the toilet is high enough for someone to be able to easily get up and sit down. And if you don't want to put in a new toilet, this illustration is showing a toilet base riser, where you can actually have the whole base of the toilet lifted up so that it can handle extra height. Simple shower options that include a removable wand type shower that allows you to adjust for various heights, shower seats. You see in there that illustration, a grab bar, a shower seat, and the ability to simply sit if need be to get in and out. Certainly, if it's possible, a zero-step entrance, a roll-in shower that you could easily get into. That requires more floor space, of course, if you're literally rolling in the wheelchair and staying in it, but it can make transferring much easier. And then finally, the transfer bench. Many houses still have bathtubs and no shower option, especially perhaps a rental property with a bathroom, and they're required to have bathtubs. So this simple transfer bench allows someone to sit down and swing their legs in to the bathtub with the support of those handles, and makes it much easier to get into the tub or to sit at a seat and then use a handheld wand to make it work. Next slide. And for getting around, grab bars are incredibly important, and grab bars are, some can be inexpensive, but grab bars need to be anchored to the wall. That's just critically important, that it's screwed into a stud. I actually worked in a facility that the county had built to be fully accessible in the bathrooms, and we discovered that they had mounted the grab bars. This was in an adult day healthcare center. The contractor had mounted the grab bars to the drywall without securing it to the studs behind. And that was just so dangerous and structurally wrong. They need to be able to support the full weight of an adult to be sure that they're useful. So that's something that probably needs to be installed by a professional unless you're very, very handy around the house. But it makes a lot of sense. And another thing you see here is the horizontal grab bar. There's the round grab bar that accommodates the soap dispenser, a grab bar that can also accommodate the toilet paper holder. But the horizontal grab bar is generally considered better than a vertical. But if there's only space for the vertical, that's better than nothing, because getting into and out of, especially a tub, if you have to step in and out, can be really, really important. Okay, Jane.
Living spaces. These are living rooms, dining rooms, bedrooms, etc. So we're now out of the kitchen and the bathroom. I did want to mention one thing I did not mention before we leave kitchens entirely, and that's the importance of the dials on your stove. If there are grandchildren in the house, you need to be very careful if they're in the front. And if they're in the back, you need to be very careful yourself, because you can so easily be burned. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, in terms of living spaces, safety considerations also include the concept that Bob mentioned, and that's visitability. Our homes are not just for ourselves, they're for our guests, and for workers. There's all kinds of reasons that people are in our home. But depending on how your space is set up, there are things you have to watch out for within your home. This is an example of safety considerations. It is recommended that there be at least 2 feet between objects so someone can move around without bumping into them or tripping over them. There is a lot to consider when you're determining where furniture should be placed. So I'll go over that in more detail if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm sorry, the lighting and electrical apparently comes first, sorry. So you would want to use in your home as much natural light as possible. And that in some cases would depend on what kind of curtains you have, blinds, and so forth. But I don't think I have to spend much time on this, because I think all of us know the advantages of using natural light. It can even keep your home warmer in the winter. But what you do want to install is night lights and motion sensor lighting. Night lights can be installed around the house and any unused plugs. and motion sensor lighting, which, for example, on stairs, the motions going toward the stairs and down could, if a motion sensor could turn on those lights. And I want to mention rocker style switches and ideal switch placement, because rocker style switches can be so much easier for arthritic hands than the toggle switch, which is very commonplace in a lot of our houses. And you see an example there. Um, that would not be an expensive change, but could make it very much easier for someone to turn on and turn off and on lights. And then glow in the dark light switches. And it suggested wall sconces in the bedroom to enhance the possibility for lighting. Next slide, please. This is interesting. The dining areas, furnishing recommendations are basically to make sure that any chairs that are going to be used have armrests so people can get in and out of them easily, and that they're safe, and that ensure safety and convenience. However, there is an acknowledgement but that dining rooms are often not used now. You see the example in the back of the slide of the chairs at a high table that looks like it's probably in the kitchen. So the main idea here is, since we often don't sit down at a dining table, that we make sure that wherever we're eating, we're in a safe place where people can get up and down. I know a lot of people now may have lunch or dinner in front of a television. If you have guests, you may have too many to be sitting at a dining room table. So all those issues are important in terms of dining room. Next slide, please. So living spaces, hallways, and stairways. It's important to have the clearances so that people can move into either into a hallway or ready to go up the steps, that there be plenty of space. As I mentioned, that the advice for hallways is 36 inches. As you see, there's been a table installed there, but there's still quite a bit of room. It's important on steps to have handrails on both sides. A person who is trying to go up and down stairs should be able to grab both sides. Carpeting can be important, but if carpeting is used on steps, it should be very low pile and very carefully placed so that there's no possibility of tripping on it, either because there's high pile or it is no longer flat against the floor, the step. I had mentioned motion sensor night lights. In some cases, treads or runners would be useful, or riser covers. But obviously, taking a good look at your steps is extremely important, because I think, according to statistics, so many broken hips occur because of falls down steps. So it's very important to take careful consideration of what should be done with them. Next slide, please. Stair lifts are an alternative solution for two-story dwellings. This can be very important. You see them advertised a great deal. You would have to find those that accommodate your particular stairways. It can be important to note that at times these can be rented or sold back. This can be, they're not inexpensive, but it can be a way to stay in your home. The laundry room. Very often, This is is in our basements, which can cause a problem. You may need a stair lift to continue using it. It's possible that the washer and dryer could be moved. So the adaptations that are important can be, as you see in the slide, the washer and dryer are installed on a platform to make them higher so the person using them does not have to bend down. Another alternative would be a top lift washer and dryer, again with the same advantage that it would not have to be lifted up and down. And another provision you see here that would accommodate a person using using the washer and dryer is a basket on wheels to make it easy. For example, you could pick up the basket and be quite heavy, and if it's on wheels, it would be more useful to a person who has mobility limitations or is doing this in a wheelchair.
All right, that kind of concludes our quick trip through a house and some of the important things, but want to make sure that you understand all the resources out there that are available that we have not talked about. One thing to think about as you've gone through is, are there a couple of quick fixes that would work in your home? Something that you think you saw today that was new and different, and I've seen some in the chat and in the question box already, of people looking for certain things and have seen things that they didn't know existed. And that makes such a difference. And I think that that's very, very simple. Some can be simple, some can be much more complicated. But using the Home Fit Your Home handout to help you choose and look for the different kinds of modifications that make sense for you. I'm going to hold up the Home Fit Guide in a moment because that paper guide is so important and covers everything that we said today and more. More that we didn't have time to get to, but are able to point you in that direction. Next slide. So here are some very specific resources. The AARP's Livable Communities Guide, the Home Fit Guide that I just mentioned is something that gives lists and helps you think through exactly how you're going to approach what might happen for you. The AARP Foundation, Home Upkeep for All, a nice way to look at maintenance, keeping it manageable and affordable, and keeping ahead of problems. Preventive maintenance is always better than something after the fact. Occupational therapists can come into the home and give you a clear idea of an assessment of what is there and what might change, what I might be able to do better. And some things can be, again, very simple, and others can be quite complicated. And then I did see a question flash by from someone about how can I find a remodeler who knows how to handle remodeling projects for older individuals and making things more accessible. And that would be a CAPS, Certified Aging in Place Specialist, CAPS, the last thing you see on there. AARP, in conjunction with the National Association of Home Builders, has put together a course offered by the National Association of Home Builders that teaches people what they need to know as they're going through and suggesting what kinds of things could happen. Finding a remodeler that is a CAPS specialist would be wonderful. But at least having someone help you to pick a remodeler, because if you find a remodeler who doesn't understand some of the language you're using, then you need to very seriously consider whether that's the right person for the job. You want to make certain that the folks have the kind of background where you're going to get what you want out of it. And so last slide is the Home Fit Guide that you see. Well, it's not going to show on my screen, but you see it there on the page. And this is just an excellent piece. And I believe I saw perhaps somewhere that these are going to be mailed to folks, but you ought to be able to request that and make certain that you get a copy. It's a 26-page guide that really is comprehensive, covers everything we did today, as I said, but more, and gives you a way to some checklists to help think through what's important to you and make the right choices for where you are. So with that, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll move on to questions and answers. And Trudy is, I think, ready to go here to pose some of the questions that we've seen.
Okay. Bob, the first question we had, I believe it was during your portion of the presentation, was about that swing hinge.
Yes.
Where
And
can one buy a swing hinge? I'm having trouble saying
Yes,
that today.
yes.
Okay.
I saw that question as well. I think you can find those at basically any hardware store, but certainly a Home Depot or a Lowe's. If you're in an area that doesn't have that, you know, the home, whatever your local hardware store is, should be able to help with that. If you look at the illustration, and it's also illustrated carefully in the HomeFit guide, you can see that it's better to have, or you may need to have someone install that for you. It shows just the simple screws and the heel plates, but the door itself could be heavy. Getting it remounted and having it set so that it works may require somebody to come into the home and do some installation. But again, that's something that many hardware stores are able to arrange, you know, on the spot. So the hinges themselves are very inexpensive and available. It's more a matter of making sure that it's installed and you get the doors where you need them, and that the doors are level and swing properly with the new hinge.
Very good. While we're on the subject of what things costs, we had a guest that wanted to know if there's such a thing as an average price for the grab bars. Can you address the cost versus the quality of grab bars, Bob?
What I would say, I'm going to guess, and I'm afraid it is a guess, that it could be $200 to install a grab bar. I'm making that up, but I'm basing that on the grab bar itself. A good sturdy grab bar is not an expensive appliance. It's the installation that matters. And having someone who knows what they're doing, can use a stud finder. If you're putting it inside, for example, a tiled shower tiles, someone has to be able to drill through the tile without destroying it. And making sure that the grab bar is securely installed and held in place. I also saw a question about, you know, a simple tub grip kind of thing that can hold on. That can work if it's securely attached to the tub and you're just using it as a simple assist device to stabilize yourself as you're stepping into and out of the tub. Otherwise, it really needs to be a pretty heavy duty grab bar. If you're leaning on it, then a simple grip thing that attaches to the inside and outside of the tub may not be sufficient. And one other thing that I forgot to mention as I was going through, it may seem obvious, but it's incredibly important to anyone who's using a bathtub as a shower, is a simple bath mat. Hardly anything is cheaper, and yet hardly anything is more incredibly important than making certain that if you're standing in a shower, you're not slipping on the floor of the tub.
Exactly. Jane, if I could ask you to unmute, because I think this question may fall more specifically in your realm of expertise, and that is, does Medicare cover the cost of stair lifts?
You know, that's a great question. And I don't know that it does. And it's a great question. That's something we'll have to look into.
Okay. Or
Yeah,
Medicare.gov may have the answer to that also.
And Bob, were you in a circumstance in which you knew someone who had to install a chairlift?
Yes, I admit that we didn't even look into Medicare as an option. I fell and had to have a chairlift installed in our house to go up one short flight of steps, and the chairlift. Bought a used chairlift, and yes, there is such a thing, and it was a nice, reputable company, but it was only a straight run of 6 steps to get to a level where I had access to a bedroom and a bathroom and a living area. And that was $2,300. So stair lifts are not inexpensive. And the one that Jane showed in the slide with that curve at the bottom, the distance makes a difference, but also how many curves there are. If you're a stairway that has a curve in it with a landing, it's going to cost significantly more.
Well, and I'm sure that companies that produce and install stair lifts may be a good resource for answering that question as well,
Right.
if they're doing the actual installation. So either Medicare.gov or the installation of the company itself. I had one other question, and actually, I'd like to know the answer to this one myself. With regard to solar path lights, one of our guests lives in the Northeast and says that they are told that they need to remove the outdoor solar path lights in the winter. We all live in Virginia. I have solar path lights. I have
Right.
never removed them. Are we supposed to?
I certainly don't here. That's true. I can understand that might be a suggestion for how long the light will last. And certainly if there are very dark days where there isn't enough sunlight or light, ambient light available, they may not light up anyway. And if it's in a very snowy area where you're clearing the sidewalk with a snow shovel or someone is doing it for you, it could literally bury the lights so that they aren't visible. So it would take something like someone shoveling around the light very carefully, knowing it's there, and trying to maintain it that way. So yes, that may not be a very practical solution in a very snowy atmosphere.
And with regard to motion sensor or solar lightings, can either one of you or both of you talk about the need to, I guess, both exterior and interior, but the need to have lighting that stays on when the power goes off?
Certainly. There are some very inexpensive options out there for lighting that is rechargeable. Obviously, if you haven't kept it charged and the power goes off and it doesn't have a full charge, it's not going to work. But we're using some stair lights. We have an exposed iron stair rail, and there's a strip light that simply uses adhesive to stick on the underside of that stair rail at the bottom to light the steps, and it's motion censored and light censored, and it's rechargeable. But of course, you have to keep it charged for that to work. There are simple stick lights that are maybe 6 inches long and will stick up onto a surface, a mounting, and again, you can pull the light down and recharge it. And it's motion censored and light sensitive. So there are some inexpensive options like that. But of course, as I say, that the critical piece is making sure that they're staying charged. And if you're in an area that is prone to long power outages, it may not last. But it should actually, the ones we have been very inexpensive from Amazon, but are easy to use and easy to install. And the charge has lasted very well. We're pretty surprised and pleased at how well that works.
I am scrolling through any comments or questions that were in the chat. I do not see anything that I've missed.
No, I was compiling them and I think that you got them all. And then there was 2 that I saw disappear before we could still ask because I jotted them down if you want, if we have time, but I think you covered them all.
You're on mute, Trudy.
Sorry, thank you. Bob, Jane, any other comments you want to make before we end the program?
The one comment I would make is trying to absorb all this that we went over in 1 hour is just about impossible. So the home fit guides are very important. You can go through them slowly, give yourself time, figure out what changes you need to make. I think this is very useful as kind of an overall perspective, but the home fit guide is extremely important if you're interested in pursuing this.
Yes, I agree. And I just saw a flash on the chat from Raven with the survey. And I know that we really encourage you to utilize that link and fill out a survey to help us make sure that we're doing this in a way that makes sense for you. And we realize that an hour is a short period of time, but we want to make this as effective as possible. And so helping us with that survey is very important.
Excellent. Very good. And as we said at the beginning, in the reminder email for today's program, there was a link where you could download the slide presentation. And in a follow-up email, we'll be sending you a link to a recording of this program as well. And that should be available either later today or in the next day or two at most. And with that, I'm going to say on behalf of AARP, I want to thank Jane and Bob for sharing their valuable time and their expertise with us today and for joining us this afternoon. And thank you for joining us this afternoon as well. We'd love to get your feedback on the program. So in the chat box, there was a link to a survey. Please click on the link, take a few minutes to share your feedback with us. That link will also be in a follow-up email. Some additional resources to keep in contact with us are on the screen now. So if you've enjoyed today's program, we invite you to join us for many of our other programs. You can see a full calendar of our events at www.aarp.org/virtual-VA. Additionally, we will be doing this program, our Home Fit program, again in 2 weeks on April 27th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find the details there also at www.aarp.org/virtual-VA. So until next time, and if I see you next 2 weeks from now, take good care of yourselves and for those you love. Bob, Jane, thank you very much. I've enjoyed working with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Have a good afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. All right.